look, Sui has seen a huge amount of growth. It's not a very old ecosystem. It's been going for a bit less than 2 years now. In the last year, it has seen tremendous growth.
Sui is one of the fastest growing cryptocurrencies in the last year. In fact, since we made this video back in April of 24, they've exploded. But what if you had found Sui like here? I want to find the next Sui.
We start seeing very large other protocols launching effectively on Sui.
Today I sit down with computer scientist George D. He is the co-founder and chief scientist at Miston Labs, one of the main developers of the Sui blockchain.
Right, and one of them, of course, that particularly excites me is the Walrus decentralized storage protocol.
As he explains the next big thing in crypto.
Walrus is really a network that launches on Sui.
Today's video is made in collaboration with the Sui Foundation. Watch to the end, click the like button to support me, and let's start, George, with your background.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm an academic actually by background. So I was a professor of computer science and still am at University College London. I've worked on peer-to-peer systems for a very long time. Back in 2000, I worked on anonymity systems and a little bit like what used to be kind of file sharing systems and all of that. Early distributed hash tables. So I kind of picked up the whole decentralization interest quite early. But then in like 2016, 2017, when Ethereum became really, popular, I guess, and we started having kind of smart contract platforms, I went back to that and I was like, that's super interesting. We used to not being able to do transaction processing in a peer-to-peer system. So I started looking at Ethereum. I was very enthused, still am. But as a system, it seemed quite limited, right? I mean, it had very limited throughput. It was getting quite expensive. As soon as, at the time, CryptoKitties became popular, right? The whole thing kind of became very expensive to use, right? So my imagination was captured at the time with how we could make a system that executes smart contracts, that scales up, that offers basically infinite capacity, etc. So we built at the time a startup, Chainspace. That startup was actually acquired by Facebook at the time. They were working on Libra, which was this kind of cryptocurrency that they were launching at the time. And their question was, how do we scale it up to 2 billion people, right? That's their user base. That was the ambition at the time. So the team kind of joined that effort. And then when Libra didn't get anywhere, I left Facebook early, and then my co-founders also left. We're from the same project, and we actually started Miston Labs, and Miston Labs was the initial contributor to the Sui network, which really embodies to some extent some of that vision of let's have a smart contracts platform that truly scales up, that is cheap to use, that is very expressive, that can be used as the heart of much more complex decentralized systems and as a control plane. And we'll talk a little bit about that, I guess, as part of our discussion on Walrus. So that's my background. Now, I do still the science as part of Miston, right? I have a research team, and to some extent, I head the team that does the kind of very early development. So as part of that, I was also the lead of the engineering team that designed Walrus, kind of worked out how it should work, what it should do, and now is actually driving it towards mainnet. Of course, by now the whole engineering organization at Miston Labs and beyond at this point is engaged in that effort, but that's how it started.
For smart contract platforms, dApp platforms, there's now a handful of protocols that are faster, cheaper than Ethereum. So just for somebody who's never heard of Sui, why are we seeing developers jump on the Sui network?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, first of all, it is true that nowadays there are multiple smart contract platforms that are, faster, let's say, or cheaper than Ethereum. I would say that this is a recent development. Lots of platforms advertise that they would be better, or maybe they were better on some dimensions, but it's a relatively recent phenomenon that truly you can rely as a developer of a decentralized kind of contract on platforms that really do offer and have seen action being better than Ethereum. Now, Sui is part of that, I would say narrow cohort of platforms that not only advertise that they're better, but actually delivered a better kind of overall experience than Ethereum. And it really comes down, and to some extent in common with others in that very small list, to to trying to build an end-to-end kind of experience that is great and that scales up for developers, right? So there is a systems aspect to that, right? You have to make sure that as people upload their contracts and as transactions in these smart contracts are being executed, there are no bottlenecks in the system. Broadly speaking, every part of the system can scale up and has plenty of spare capacity most of the time to accommodate what it needs to do. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is really the quality of programmability, as I call it, right? There are some platforms that are quite performant, but they are performant at the cost of making it quite awkward to express very general things that you would like to express. They are, for example, super optimized for just payments, or super optimized just for the kind of things you would do in games, or super optimized for dealing with NFTs, let's say, right? But Sui is quite wonderful in the sense that it is actually a generic solution, right? I mean, you can write in Sui Move, smart contracts that are extremely expressive and have very complex different things interacting in them, right? You can have on one side decentralized finance and coins, but that interacting with, let's say, then a storage system, and that interacting with, again, some NFTs that exist and have some kind of logic on chain, and all of that works well together. You don't have to kind of partition that state or kind of do one thing very well, but the other ones are kind of weaker. So I think this is the promise that Sui brings to the table, right? That you really have all the best of breed techniques in there, the best programmability story as well to let programmers express anything they would like in smart contracts, and it just all works basically.
Let's talk about Walrus, but final question on Sui, ecosystem developments or roadmap in 2025. What can we expect?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Sui has seen a huge amount of growth. It's not a very old ecosystem. It's been going for a bit less than 2 years now. In the last year, it has seen tremendous growth, right? I mean, we went to $1.8 billion equivalent of TVL. This is like a top chain by that metric. And in fact, by other metrics like market cap and fully diluted market cap, it's within the top 10, 15 these days, right? Similarly, in terms of its ecosystem, it has grown enormously. Nowadays, for example, what I'm very excited and is happening right now is that the Phantom wallet is integrating a Sui functionality into it. This is the first move chain that Phantom is actually integrating. It's a very high quality wallet. We're all very excited about this. And broadly speaking, Sui has seen a huge amount of DeFi, right? Exchanges, lending, aggregators of liquidity, and of course, Deep Book acting as a kind of backbone, kind of central order limit book that really provides liquidity to everything that is going on. And what is exceptional about Deep Book is that it's an on-chain order book, which again, like talking about things that systems of the generation, let's say, of Ethereum could not really quite do, that really is something that could not be done easily before. At the same time, we have also integrated the latest word in consensus technology in the last year. So Sui launched only a year and a half ago, as I said, but then a year after that, we literally changed the consensus to make it faster. Nowadays, transactions basically commit in about half a second. This is very quick. You click, something happens, you don't have to wait, you don't have to worry about it, right? And also we integrated, stable coins, and, broadly speaking, there is some, very stable fees. And when we see congestion, that congestion does not really affect the whole system. There are particular objects that become hot. We have congestion control that makes that very efficient and limits effectively any, degradation that anyone else will see. And now what is really exciting going forward is that we start seeing very large other protocols launching effectively on Sui, right? And one of them, of course, that particularly excites me is the Walrus decentralized storage protocol, which basically is about to launch on Sui quite soon.
So for somebody who's never heard of Walrus, should we think of it like a Filecoin to Ethereum, or what is Walrus?
Right. So Walrus is a secure, decentralized blob store. That's the way I think of it. Now let's take that one word at a time, right, and understand what that means, right? So first of all, a blob store basically takes, broadly speaking, files that don't really have any kind of structure as far as the system is concerned, and allows you to just store them in a decentralized kind of network. This is what makes it a decentralized store. Each file is not just stored in one place; it is literally stored all across the network. And of course, you can read this file, right? You can say, okay, I would like to read back something that Austin has stored, or George has stored, or I have stored before, right? And you get it back. But it's also secure in the sense that it's not just about storing and reading and, well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it's the same file, sometimes it's a different file, right? It provides extremely strong guarantees around both the integrity, the authenticity, and the availability of these files and these blobs that are stored. So, for example, when you store a file and it's read by anyone, they can be sure, based on the blob ID, that they're reading exactly what was stored, right? Like you cannot modify any single bit, you cannot actually change any part of the file. They can also make sure that, if they actually look on chain, they know exactly who actually stored that file, right? There is a strong authenticity. You can actually guarantee that. And finally, there is a strong notion of availability, even if like up to a third to two-thirds of the network, depending on, the configuration, goes down, you can still recover the file. This is quite incredible, right? Like it means that, if the network, let's say, has 100 nodes, right, 100 storage nodes, up to like 60 or 66 of them can go down, and the file is still actually available, which is an incredible amount of resilience if you're worried about those kind of things. Now, there is a subtlety here, right, which is that, as I mentioned earlier to you, Walrus is really a network that launches on Sui, right? So Sui and Walrus, as you hinted, have a very close relationship with each other. Um, Walrus involves storage nodes that need to basically store these blobs and chunks of these blobs, etc., right? And they do this very well. However, they actually rely on Sui itself and smart contracts on Sui in order to do all of the accounting and all of the metadata handling that you need in order to run such a network, right? So in particular, right, all the payments for using the storage nodes, storing files, etc., these happen on Sui smart contracts. All the metadata about what are these blobs, how do I refer to them, what kind of data they contain, what is their life cycle, can I delete them, can I extend their lifetime, can I actually assign more storage capacity to them? All of that happens through Sui. And then finally, the actual management of the Walrus storage node network itself. Who are the nodes? Where is their address? How much should you pay them for, the storage they provide, and all of that? All of that again happens as a smart contract on Sui. So you see, there is a very tight relationship between Sui as a smart contract platform and Walrus, because effectively Walrus uses Sui as this kind of like coordination layer to coordinate the activity of the storage nodes that comprise and make basically Walrus as a decentralized network.
What is the market opportunity of a walrus? Like, would it be an AWS killer?
Right. So one would like that, but in fact, it's better than AWS in some ways, right? So you go to AWS and you're like, okay, I'm going to store a file, let's say on AWS, let's say S3, which is again a blob store. I will get the file back. More often than not, it happens, but you're not really guaranteed that, right? Like if tomorrow Amazon decides that you're not a very good customer, well, you will just lose access to your files. If someone hacks into an Amazon server and modifies your file, you may not even know that it happened, right? Because you're not going to check if it is exactly the same file to the last bit. If Amazon or a service like that goes out of business, well, it's tough luck. Basically, you've lost your data there, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to access it again. So to some extent, the fact that Walrus provides the kind of services that Amazon provides, but with that security guarantee, both for integrity, authenticity, and for availability, kind of offers more to people who use Walrus for storing their files than going and using a cloud service, right? This is the whole point and the whole promise of a decentralized and secure blob store. Now, on the other side, of course, Amazon has scales and data centers, and is able to actually cross-subsidize, let's say, different products such as storage, right? that make it very attractive if you just have bulk data that doesn't need any security, right? So if you just generate data, and you don't really care if it is there tomorrow or not, or you're super sensitive about, price or anything like that, probably going for a centralized cloud store or just storing it on your local hard disk is good enough for you, right? You don't need the security properties, I guess, that a decentralized service provides, and that's fine, right? This is not really the segment that Walrus and other networks in that space try to cover, right? So I wouldn't say it tries to go after the Amazon market, because lots of people who use Amazon do not need the kind of assurances that a decentralized store offers. But some of them do, right? Some of them do, and as a result, they basically store, let's say, the same file in multiple places, etc. Well, then you can use Walrus, and all of this is done automatically. So that's an important kind of like category of data. Then there are use cases that are much more, let's say, internal to the blockchain industry, right? If you, for example, are running any kind of chain or an L1 or an L2, and you have some history, right? Where do you store it? As we discussed, you could store it on Amazon. If Amazon decides that it doesn't want you as a customer, you lose it all. That's a bit embarrassing, right? So it's much safer to store it on a system like Walrus, right? You know that it's going to be there tomorrow. Similarly, a lot of smart contracts have media assets, NFTs being the most obvious, example of this. You don't want to be storing your NFTs just on a cloud store, because again, if you lose your data, it's gone forever, right? You want to store it somewhere that is decentralized. And the same goes for more traditional Web2 use cases now. Now that is more interesting here, because they use, right, cloud services. But let's imagine you're some kind of like up and coming disruptor in the social networking space, right? One of the reasons why people don't like traditional social networking services is that, you upload all that material. Again, they don't like you, they ban you, you're gone. You can't even see the pictures from your holidays, let alone the chats with your friends anymore, right? But you see, if you are trying to offer such a service, but actually tell your users, look, I will never be able to exclude you from your data. What you can do is, as a service provider, you use Walrus as a backing service for user data, right? And then you can literally provide the guarantee that your users will be able to access their data, even if they're not really part of your service, because their data lives on this kind of neutral, decentralized store, which is Walrus. So we're also trying to go after use cases like this, where traditional Web2 technologies have not really delivered the promise they should deliver in terms of like data portability, in terms of like data availability, in terms of users credibly being able to trust them, that their data is going to be there and is going to be the same tomorrow.
Okay. I'm understanding why this is better than any of the centralized solutions we have now. Why is Walrus better, or how does it compete with the decentralized options in storage we have, like a Filecoin, like others?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, first of all, it is important to say that some of these networks you mentioned, particularly IPFS, Filecoin, I mean, they're true visionaries in this space, right? And to some extent, they define the category, they define the advantages, many of the advantages that I already mentioned. And the main way to think about them in relation to Walrus is that they're effectively the legacy systems, right? They were the first attempt to build something like that. So, for example, IPFS, wonderful system, uses a distributed hash table under the hood for doing the routing and the mapping of blocks to nodes. It doesn't really have an economic system integrated into it, right? So it's very tough to use really and scale up, because there is no easy way of like paying and managing effectively all of these relationships. So then Filecoin to some extent is the next evolution of that. And what does Filecoin do? It basically creates an economic system using a blockchain, which again is quite visionary, over IPFS. But the nature of that blockchain is really a blockchain, because it was there first as a visionary system. It was a blockchain as we were building blockchains in the 2016s, 2017s, like nearly 10 years ago. So it's very limited, right? You cannot really do a lot of things. It's slow. It doesn't really allow for the kind of like either performance or flexibility that Sui allows as a control plane for Walrus, right? They had to build their own blockchain with the technologies from, let's say, 10 years ago as a shorthand, okay? Also, right, there is another advantage in not just using your own blockchain for running a control system over your storage network, but actually reusing a blockchain like Sui, where a lot of other things are happening, right? Because, for example, the Walrus control plane that runs on Sui expresses things like a WAL token, but it also expresses things like resources around storage, logic around managing life cycle of your blobs, such as when to delete them, when to extend them, etc. It manages the life cycle of nodes and also the economics and the proof of stake around nodes, right? Now, these aspects, if they lived on their own blockchain, right? Let's say we forked Sui and we just basically used that in order to run a control plane for Walrus, right? You could do these activities in an excellent way, and that would be that. But because instead of forking Sui, they're actually integrated into the mainnet of Sui, now they can interact with the rich world of other contracts running on Sui. So, for example, you can use all the dexes in order to trade the coins, but also you can use smart contracts that interact between the Walrus logic around storing files and blobs and the DeFi ecosystem in Sui. My favorite example of that is you can basically create a contract that acts effectively like a tip jar, right? I mean, it allows anyone to donate some WAL, right? And then it extends the life cycle of a blob on the Walrus network. But then you could extend that idea and say, well, no, instead of actually having a tip jar, what I will do is I will literally store in there, let's say, 100 Sui. And then I will invest this 100 Sui into the Sui DeFi ecosystem, and any yield I get, I will actually use in order to extend the lifetime of a blob, potentially forever, right? Because that's a recurrent revenue. So you see that you combine effectively the facilities and the resources offered as part of the Walrus universe with the facilities and the resources offered by the rest of the Sui ecosystem, in this case DeFi, in order to build totally new products that you couldn't really build if you had a totally separate blockchain. So this is the difference, if you want, between even an excellent instantiation of these more traditional systems, which they're not, right? They're kind of oldish blockchains in order to support, Filecoin, etc. And Walrus. Walrus uses the best of breed control plane, and it's integrated into a very large ecosystem already. Then there are new systems like Celestia, and Celestia is actually a system I know a lot about. It's built by friends. They're excellent at doing something very specific, right? They offer availability for Ethereum L2s. They have excellent integrations with Ethereum. They have excellent kind of relationships with different kind of L2 toolkits and providers. But that's what they do, right? I mean, they offer that. They charge a premium for storage space, and they only offer storage space, broadly speaking, for a month, right? For small amounts of storage as well for a month. They're trying to extend that now, to be fair, but that's basically where the niche where they're very good is. Walrus on the other side tries to cover, multi-megabytes, tens to hundreds of megabytes for years, right? So it's a very different category again. So it occupies this niche where it really improves the category of decentralized blob store, and it's quite generic and quite programmable. It's really a platform that can interact with the whole world of smart contracts.
George, I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Like, I feel like I have such a better understanding. Like, as we just dig deeper on Walrus, what are projects you see building, and what key use cases could really benefit from this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we already have quite a few partners, and I'll talk about things that exist before talking about things that could exist, right? So we already are working with Tusky, for example, which is a project that is building a Dropbox, kind of experience, right? So you can basically get some storage and you can upload some files, and of course these files are available as a folder to you. But it is inherently social. That's one interesting thing of doing, this kind of Dropbox on a blockchain, because all of that control plane now is on a blockchain, right? You can basically share and define who can access your files, etc., through the blockchain. So that's basically what they do. They also provide encryption on top of the blob store that is Walrus. so that you can have confidential relationships and send files to people and not allow the whole world to read them. So that's kind of an interesting experience which combines the social aspects of Web3. It combines with some advanced encryption, makes a really interesting kind of product. Another example is Decrypt. Decrypt is running the well-known crypto-specific news site. And they basically also provide all of their news stories through Walrus, right? So they effectively mirror their content on Walrus. Now, why do they do that? Well, we all know the press is important, right? We all know that it's quite bad if they are censored, or if somehow their servers go down or anything like that, and people cannot anymore read their news. That's their main product, right? So actually using a Walrus in order to store that and make sure that it will be there. It is there actually in a very with high authenticity. You can check that this is actually the article that the Decrypt journalists intended to upload, that you're actually reading. These are very important and interesting properties, let's say, for the news kind of industry, broadly speaking. Now, we also have applications around AI, right? We have partners that basically are looking at that space. They are looking at both storing models on Walrus, as well as storing inferences, kind of generative, answers on Walrus. Now, you will ask, like, why would you do that, right? I mean, why? These models are big, like, you could store them on your hard disk. And the insight here is really about authenticity, about integrity, a little bit about availability, but it is largely about auditability, right? If our society is to start relying on these kind of machine learning models for important things, right? Like, for important processes in society, you would really like to have a layer that says, yes, we all know this is the correct model. It hasn't been backdoored to give me the wrong answers. It hasn't actually been modified. It has actually been updated and uploaded by the right party that everybody can check. And also, if now suddenly you're going to start using inferences for important purposes, right? It generates images or it does classification. You would like to have an audit trail that indeed, for a particular set of inputs, these are the correct set of outputs, and you can audit that, right? It's not actually, again, tampered with, or some adversary didn't get on the way between you and the model, and he's feeding you the wrong thing to make you reach like the wrong decisions, right? So Walrus offers that authenticity and integrity layer, as well as an availability layer, that can really create that kind of assurance in that space, which otherwise is difficult to get, right? That's the kind of use case they're going for. And finally, let me speak a little bit about more speculative use cases that, and kind of like applications that really interest me. We actually launched the Walrus Adventures, which is a meme contest, right? I mean, you can upload a meme, you can vote on memes, and it's all good fun and games, right? And it kind of demonstrates also a very important other kind of application, which is Walrus sites. It allows you to upload a whole website to Walrus, and you just go to walrusadventures.walrus.site, and you can get it, right? And you can upload your own website. So that's kind of fun. And of course, these websites very often can be front ends for dApps. So now suddenly you have a dApp that has a smart contract in the back end. But the front end, where does it run, right? I mean, it could run on a centralized server, of course, but now it can also run on Walrus, and this way the whole experience touches decentralized infrastructure, which is kind of exciting. But to come back to the Walrus Adventures, you can upload a meme, you can vote on a meme. It's kind of cute, but what it really points to, and what I really would like the community to be pointed to, is that, look, this is the primitive kind of like Web 2 experience that then evolved into the social networking sites as we know them today, right? Like, if you, for those folks who are very old like me and remember like the 90s, right? And the end of the 90s, these were the first kind of CGI websites we would see, where you could like maybe upload something and, something would change. It wasn't just static content, right? That then people say, well, wait a second, then if I authenticate users, if I create a feed, and now suddenly I can upvote other people's stuff, well, that leads to the Twitters and Reddits and Facebooks and, all of that stuff. So I would be super excited if people basically take Walrus, And then take also Sui as a transaction processing system and start building these kind of more social experiences, but also social experiences that really fulfill the promise that no one actually owns this, right? You will not be able to be locked out of your account. You will own your data. You will basically have control of your social graph. And all that, right? So these are the most speculative things that I hope I will see. And we already see some folks in the community getting inspiration and started going that way.
And what's the timeline slash roadmap for Walrus in 2025? Is it, I know, what is the timeline?
Yeah, so let's look back first of all. So Walrus is already at the second test net. So we kind of rebooted the system in January, and now we're already running the second test net. And the second test net already runs the smart contracts that are very close to what we intend mainnet to be. So folks can already go and use it and see for themselves what it feels like to upload blobs, download blobs, upload Walrus sites, etc. And we already have a community as part of that second testnet of about 80 storage nodes. So there is more than a petabyte of storage available on the network. And we can write to the network hundreds of megabytes per second and read them as well. So it's quite a high performance network already. That's the testnet phase. And this is the network that will slowly evolve into being a mainnet. And our target for that would be Q1, broadly speaking. We are running audits. We are making sure that it's stable. We're actually doing performance tests to, iron out any performance bottlenecks before we actually go to mainnet. And mainnet is just the beginning, right, for the Walrus team. After mainnet, we already are planning on having quite a few things happening. Purely in terms of features, for example, we are intending to integrate more tightly a project we call Seal to give access to everyone to a decentralized key management system that allows you to effectively encrypt your files under a key and then having smart contracts that people interact with that gives them access to get the decryption keys to read the file. These are important kind of use cases because it means that suddenly you can do, for example, private sharing of files through a smart contract in an automated way. You upload an article like in a Substack type of experience. People can read the first paragraph, they send $1 to a smart contract, boom, that unlocks basically a key that allows you to decrypt the rest of the article, right? That's kind of interesting. Suddenly you can have a kind of creator economy going on there. It also allows you to say, well, look, I will encrypt a file to Austin and then set up basically an access control list and Austin can request a key and, decrypt it even though we don't really have any previous relationship. And then you can have a right to then forward it to someone else or something like that. So that's Seal, and that basically extends the capabilities of Walrus into effectively the realm of confidentiality, right? Because you can play these games, but it's again programmable confidentiality. You can program all these things through smart contracts. So that's one kind of direction we're taking the project after, even after the launch.
George, man, thank you so much for sharing your time today. Links for everything down below. Final thoughts, or is there anything we didn't cover on Walrus or Sui?
No, I think that we have covered most important things. One thing that is very important is the fact that, Walrus is the beginning of the story. And as such, there are huge opportunities for folks in the community to join in and provide genuine value to the whole ecosystem, right? Walrus, when it comes out the door, even as a mainnet, is not going to have all the bells and whistles, let alone all the apps that many other ecosystems have, let alone that Web2 has. So it's a huge opportunity for developers, product designers, entrepreneurs, and users to actually engage and shape the way it goes. So I would hate if we finish this kind of interview, people thinking, oh, well, Walrus is the perfect system. There's nothing to be done. Maybe I'll use it. Maybe I won't use it, but that's it, right? In fact, it's a work in progress. And I would like to extend a kind of like invitation to the whole community to try it, first of all, give feedback, and then build on it, right? We are extremely focused on making sure that people who want to build a future using decentralized infrastructures have all the tools they need to do that. And Walrus is a part of that. And we would like to hear from them what they need to make Walrus a better system for them.